So in the previous video, the Reisha says that Kol shechavti b'shmirato heksharti et nizko. Anything that I'm chayiv to provide shmirah to, and I don't, I said that was the implied point, heksharti et nizko. As if I set up the case of the nezek. And heksharti b'miktzat nizko, if I set up the possibility for some of the nezek to happen, we said that referred to the last part of the nezek. Chavti b'tashalumin ka'eksha kol nizko. You're chayiv in all of it because you're the one that really led to the nezek happening. Today in the Seifa, we're going to look at the types of property that if you were to damage them would be chayav. From the learning about the types that you would be chayav, we can think through the opposite and what would be patur. So it's going to teach us 3 types of property and then 2 locations that would be chayav or would be patur depending on what kind of property and where it is. So we're going to take a look at that now. First, I would like you to take down these key terms. These are going to be the key terms that will help you in understanding the Seifa of the Mishnah. You should write them in your notebook now. You can just pause the video and take those down. Now that you have them down, we can jump into the Mishnah. Nechasim is property, right? And the first case of property, which is worded a little bit strangely, a little bit complicated, is nechasim she'ein behem me'ilah. Me'ilah is an avera, which involves taking something that belongs to the Beit HaMikdash. It doesn't really have an owner, right? It belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, so to speak, it belongs to Hashem, and using it for personal use. It's a very serious avera. It's a very big deal. Anything that belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, called hektish, from the word kodesh, kadosh. It's something that is holy. It's something that belongs to the Beit HaMikdash. If you use that for personal usage, that is me'ilah. The opposite of hektish, something that you could do the avera of me'ilah on, meaning it belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, is something that belongs to a regular person. Something that doesn't have the possibility of me'ilah is called chulin, which means it's not holy. It doesn't belong to the Beit HaMikdash. So nechasim she'ein behem me'ilah means chulin. Only things that cannot have the avera of me'ilah would be chayav if you were to cause nezek to them. The reason is that hektish, right, doesn't have an owner. Who are you going to pay back? I'm sorry I broke your thing. Hashem, can I pay you back? It doesn't really work, right? Paying back is trying to make someone feel better, trying to give them back their thing. You're not really giving back Hashem something because everything belongs to him. So there's no one to pay back here. There is an isser of me'ilah, an avera. You're not allowed to do that, but you would be patur if you were to cause nezek to hektish, right? If it has ein behen me'ilah, it is chulin, and if you cause nezek to it, you're chayav. If it's yesh behen me'ilah, I learned that from the opposite of what the Mishnah lists. It's called hektish, and it would be patur if you cause nezek. So anytime you break something, cause nezek to something that belongs to the Beit HaMikdash, hektish, you're patur. If it doesn't have the isra of me'ilah, the vera of me'ilah, ein behem me'ilah, it's called chulin, and then you'd be chayav. That does not mean you are allowed to do it. It just means on a technical level, you're patur because there's no one to pay back. So nechasim she'ein behem me'ilah, anything that you could not do the avera of me'ilah to, anything that is not hektish, anything that is chulin is chayav. Anything that is not, that you could do me'ilah to, hektish, will be patur. I would suggest actually taking down this chart. Again, you can pause the video now and take down the chart. It's very helpful to keep that clear. The next category is going to be nechasim shel b'nei brit. B'nei brit refer to the people of the brit of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right? The avot, the imachot. It refers to a Jewish person. So an eino b'nei brit, are a person who is not Jewish. The Torah was given to us as a special relationship between us and Hashem. There's special mitzvot, and some of them are the same or very similar to secular law, right? The laws of Nezikin exist in American law, they exist in Canadian law, in Mexican law, in Saudi Arabian law, in African law, everywhere they have these laws. But when we're learning the halachot of Nezikin, we're not just learning a law, we're learning a mitzvah, a connection to Hashem. That only applies when the people involved are Jewish. So it says, if you were to cause nezek to nechasim shel b'nei brit, you would be chayav. If you were to cause nezek to the person that is eino ben brit, and the person who is not Jewish, you'd be patur. That doesn't really mean you're patur. It means the specific halachot of nezikin don't apply. From the Torah perspective of that mitzvah of nezikin, you're patur. However, there is a halacha called dina d'machuta dina. The law of the land, the law of a country is something we have to keep. We're supposed to keep the laws in wherever country we're in. So the law is that if you cause damage, you have to pay it back. We still have a mitzvah to pay it back. It's just not the mitzvah of nezikin. It's a different direction. Also, it's always good to make a kiddush Hashem, go beyond the letter of the law and do the right thing to make someone feel better. Show Jews care. They value other people's property, which is really the meaning behind all of nezikin, is making sure we don't damage other people's property. So according to the Mishnah here, nechasim shel b'nei brit, if you cause nezik to them, you are chayiv. These are the things that you are chayiv. Nechasim shel eino b'nei brit would be patur, but only from the perspective of nezikin halachot, not from the perspective of the right thing to do or the ultimate halacha that you'd have to follow. The third category is nechasim hamiyuchadim. Miyuchadim means has an owner. Again, kind of like hektish. If there is no owner to pay and you break it, who are you going to pay? Right? The opposite of miyuchadim, having an owner, is hefker, doesn't have an owner. If you go into the forest and break a tree, right? Again, it's not the right thing to do. There's a halacha of mitzvah of bal tashchit, of just not breaking things, not wasting things or destroying things for no reason. But if you do cause nezek, say it's an accident, even if it was on purpose, like, who are you going to pay? If you have a house that's abandoned, and I mean really abandoned, you cannot track down who owns it. There's no one there, and you want to break it. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but who are you going to pay back, right? So from a technical perspective, you would be patur. You would not have to pay back because you can't pay them back. They don't exist. An application of this would be in our society, right? When you put something out on the side of the road for garbage, you don't own it anymore. You're saying, I'm throwing it out. That's like saying it's hefker. If someone comes over and breaks it, not the right thing to do, but it would be patur. Doesn't belong to anybody anymore. It's hefker. So nechasim shel hefker would be patur. Nechasim hamiyuchadim would be chayav. So that's the one listened to the Mishnah. From listening in the Mishnah, I learned the exception, which is the opposite. Those are the three types of property that would be chayav. Now we're going to look into types of places, right? Locations, property in the sense of a place. It says b'kol makom. The general rule is b'kol makom. Any place that you cause nezek, there you're going to be chayav. But the Mishnah says chutz. Chutz means an exception. So here the Mishnah is only teaching the exception, saying most places you're going to be chayav if you cause nezek. Chutz mereshut hamayuchedet lamazik. Again, that miyuchedet means belongs to the mazik. It's private property. If it's a private place that belongs to the mazik, and somebody else brings their stuff onto it and it gets damaged because of something the mazik was doing, well, it's the mazik's property. They can do whatever they want, right? In my backyard, if I want to dig a hole and I don't feel like covering it, whether or not it's the right thing to do or it's a good idea, I'm entitled to do that. It's my property. If someone comes in with their donkey and falls into the hole, well, why were you in my backyard, right? It's my property. If somebody puts their food in my backyard, somebody gets attacked even by the dog in my backyard, there's a sign that says beware of dog, right? Well, why were you in my backyard? Why were you putting food there? Why were you doing something in a place that belongs to me? It's my private property. There, I'd be patur as the mazik, even though my things caused the nezek, my property caused the nezek, but you weren't supposed to be there in the first place, right? The nizak shouldn't have been there. They shouldn't have been doing what they're doing. Therefore, the mazik is patur, and not the nizak is chayav. He doesn't have to pay anything, but they don't have a claim. They can't say that, oh, you broke my stuff because you went to the wrong place that you weren't supposed to be. The other case that the Mishnah says is kol makom chutz, again, mereshut hanizak v'hamazik. A place that's shared by the nizak and mazik. They're both allowed to be there. And the caveat is they're both using it for normal use. They agree upon that normal use. For example, if they are both agreeing that a certain field should be used to raise goats, cows, whatever, and the nizak starts planting wheat there, right? Beautiful golden corns of wheat, and they're delicious, going to make amazing flour with it, and the goat eats it. He says, hey, your goat ate my wheat. The mazik will say, yeah, because it's a goat field, right? Why are you growing wheat in a goat field over here? Why would you have a picnic in the dog park? If the dog eats your food, it's because you shouldn't have had a picnic in the dog park. That's a bad choice. So anywhere where the mazik and the nizak are both allowed to be, it's a shared space, not a reshut harabim, but a shared space, and they're using it for normal use, right? If they agree that somewhere should be a place where you practice fireworks and something gets burnt, or you dig holes and something falls in, you can't make a claim that, hey, your fire, your hole broke my stuff, because that's what the space is for, right? You don't go into somewhere where there's a bunch of holes, not pay attention, fall in and say, hey, who put this hole here? Like, it's a place where we're digging holes. It's a construction site. That's what you do in a construction site. You build holes. You have things that's a big sign that says not safe. So if the place is something that is used for something that causes nezek, and they're both allowed to be there, then there's no claim to make because that's what the place is for. So that would be pater as well. But kol makom, otherwise, everywhere else, then the nezek is going to be chayav, right? A regular place, the regular halachot of nezek would apply in any place that is miyuchedet l'nizak. The private property of the nizak, if somebody comes into someone else's house and causes nezek, for sure the mazik is going to be chayav, because what were you doing in that person's house, right? Squidward says, get out of my house. Every time SpongeBob and Patrick go into Squidward's house, they cause nezek. They're not supposed to be there. Every time they're going to be chayav because they weren't invited, and that's the space of Squidward, that's the place of the nizak. They're causing the nezek, for sure that's going to be chayav. A reshut harabim, right, that belongs to everybody. You can't do dangerous things in a public place that's going to lead to nezek happening. And any place that the behavior, even if it's a shared place, is not normal. It's not allowed. If you say, hey, we share an apartment, I'm going to bring my cow over, and the cow causes nezek, it's because you're not supposed to bring a cow into an apartment. So even though it's a shared space, the mazik is allowed to be there. That's not a cow place, right? If the cow causes nezek, it's because you brought a cow into an apartment. That's weird. Don't do that. So anytime that the behavior is not normal, it's a reshut harabim, or it's miyuchedet l'nizak, those are going to be chayav. Those are not mentioned in the Mishnah, because the Mishnah here is listing the exceptions, because most places fit into one of these three. Most places, dangerous behavior is not allowed, or is a reshut harabim, or is the private property of the nizak. It's going to be much rarer that a person's private property is the place that they personally cause that nezek. So we have these cases. If the nechasim fit into one of the categories mentioned, the last line of the Mishnah says, "Kashehizach chav hamazik l'shalem mitashlume nezek meteva aretz." One of the categories that was mentioned, the type of property, the place, whatever it is that leads the case to be chayav, if that happens, the mazik has to pay tashlume nezek. They have to pay back for the property that they caused damage to. If the nezek falls into one of those exceptions, mazik is patur. He doesn't have to. She doesn't have to pay. Tashlumi nezek. The last point is this metava aretz thing. This is from Pasuk. If the person's paying back in cash, it has to be the actual cash value of the thing. If they don't have the cash, they're selling property, you have to sell good property. You can't just say, oh, I broke your really expensive watch. Here, I got this one out of a vending machine. Have that instead? No. It has to be metava aretz, from good land. Not necessarily literally land, but it has to be good property that really does give back the value that was lost to the nizak. When the case is one that's chayav, then they had to pay tashlumi nezek. It has to be from good property. Right? The best thing we can learn from here is provide that proper shmira. Do the right thing. Guard your property from causing nezek so we don't have this issue in the first place.